Dani Cook, resident of Kingsport, Tennessee. Since the last BMA meeting, the city attorney has amended the proposed ordinance in concerning of ways. And the ordinance that I'm referring to is the addition under Chapter 62 under nuisances, referring and, in my opinion, targeting the First Amendment rights of the people who are peacefully protesting and have been for 202 days for access to safe, quality health care for both patients and providers. First is the use of the word encroach, which implies an intrusion into a place where one does not belong. Is it the position of this BMA that for the public to be on a public right-of-way constitutes an encroachment? I mean, seriously. Is Kingsport now the royal forest with the sheriff of BMA enforcing the wishes of King Ballot Health against intrusion by its peasants? Well, I guess for that to be the case, the king would have to actually know what land belongs to their kingdom. But I digress. As you are aware, the Constitution prohibits the government from prohibiting the right of the people to peacefully assemble and an exercise of their First Amendment rights. And while not absolute, the law has provided clear boundaries for any intrusion in its execution. In 1969, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned an ordinance that prohibited parades, assemblies, and protests on city streets without a permit. The court found that they were designed specifically to suppress speech, not to control traffic as the law was intended. One of the court's holdings in that case that is particularly relevant to what this board is attempting to do now is that any licensing requirement for quote-unquote free expression in publicly owned places is unconstitutional if it is not narrowly defined and objectively applied. In the city's amended ordinance, it states that permits will be issued for, quote, special events and will be time limited, but the ordinance is silent as to critical details. What constitutes a, quote unquote, special event? For what time period may a permit be issued? Who will make these determinations and on what basis? Without clear rules, how can the people know how to comply with this ordinance? Without the rules precisely spelled out, what is to keep the city of Kingsport, although I'm sure this would not be the case, from enforcing this ordinance in an arbitrary and capricious manner? Based on the U.S. Supreme Court holding, it becomes imperative to ask, is this ordinance unconstitutionally vague? See Shuttlesworth versus Birmingham, Alabama. Significant campaign contributors. I would imagine you are familiar with Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, where the U.S. Supreme Court upheld in 2010 money as an expression of speech and protected under the First Amendment. It is our position, and a quite convincing one, that the money we have spent on our canopies and tarps are also an exercise of our speech. In fact, the presence of our canopies and tarps are also, just their physical presence themselves are a physical representation of our speech that loudly yet peacefully proclaims our resistance to the presence of a medical monopoly in our community that can get access to quality care. And oh yeah, while suing the poor, sick, and vulnerable at the same time. Many of those who voted for you. What you see on the image of the quote-unquote model city is in fact beautiful, vibrant patchwork. It's the pieces of the quilt, like your grandmother used to make, that makes up the fabric of this country. What you see as blemishes, what you see as something that is the dedication, the commitment, the coming together to stand in opposition to a medical monopoly because our state took away our right to fight that in court when they amended the law and added an appeal clause. This is what we are left with. You call it ugly, it is gorgeous. It is what we strap on boots and Kevlar and fight for. It is what my father did 2 tours in Vietnam for. It is what my mother did, my brothers did, it is what I did. This is not about what looks good or pretty or what you think is socially acceptable. This is in fact what we are founded on, what we are built on. You all are about to make history tonight, one way or the other. And the people in this city and in this region are going to help you do it, whatever you choose. A member of this board ran for public office in recent years and used the slogan, "Citizens come first, not special interest." We say prove it, because the people and the civil rights attorneys are watching. We are watching. Thank you. Dani, Kingsport, Tennessee. I would first like to thank the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for your actions tonight. In your decision to pass the ordinance, you have done more than we've been able to do in 202 days. You have elevated our cause. You have ensured that a national audience is going to pay attention. And they're going to want to know about the relationships and the members and properties and quitclaim deeds and all of those other things. All things are going to be prominent at this point in time. So thank you for your diligence. That's tended to be the theme. I would say, Alderman Phillips, that when you state that Ballot Health is a private company, your daddy, when he was the mayor in 2007, should have considered that fact when he wanted to form a committee to investigate Charter Communications and their complaints that the citizens were passing along about their level of service, the same way the citizens are passing along their complaints about Ballot Health. The difference is Charter Communications didn't change a law. Charter Communications wasn't a nonprofit, and they weren't a medical monopoly. So they created actually dismantling our hospitals like Ballot is. But, you know, I guess your dad had an exception for that rule. When it comes to the Public Hospital Authority, it is not required that Ballot Health sell a hospital. That is not the way that piece of legislation works. I would like for anyone who would like to find out about this piece of legislation, schedule a meeting with me. For those of you all who have said that, I believe it was you, Alderman Duncan, said that you were concerned about lawsuits. That is a fair argument, because in the time that you have passed that ordinance, 44 of your residents have expressed through a poll that they are willing to sign on to a class action lawsuit for injunctive relief against the city of Kingsport. That is a fact. I'm looking at it. Go to Facebook. You'll see it yourself. That will happen. In addition, for those of you all who say that you would like to see us form some sort of meeting of the minds, right? One of the things that I would like to proffer to you, because maybe it's been missed in some of the communication with folks who tend to know so much and yet know absolutely nothing at all. Let me share with you that, and I'll be happy to show you these as well. This would be November 15th, 2018 at 2:28 p.m. This is a message from myself to Tony Keck. Good afternoon, Tony. One more thing. In an effort to truly provide the best options for resolution, can you provide me the breakdown of this plan that you guys have announced? In other words, what's it going to cost to build the pediatric ERs? How much will you save by closing the Holston Valley NICU, downgrading the level 1 trauma, etc.? This way, I can accurately assess how I would recommend allocating those dollars. I'm happy to sign an NDA as I understand the sensitivity of this information. Tony's response, Dani, I can't really send you anything proprietary, NDA notwithstanding, but I will assemble for you a number of plans related to our merger, which are public, but probably not read by too many people, which outline our new investments in population health, behavioral health, pediatrics, and rural health. Essentially, it's incremental spending of $308 million over the next decade, much of which is funded by merger savings, which y'all know that means cuts, right? Which are coming from many places. I'll take whatever you can send, and I appreciate it. So for every single one of you that sits back and wants to criticize me and where I've come, if you thought that my plan was to come and sit outside for 202 days, to miss the last summer that my 5-year-old grandson had before he started school, to miss Bella's second year for her NICU homecoming, if you all thought that this was my optimal plan, that somehow I'm getting so much out of this, I just needed so much attention that I offered to sign an NDA, get over yourself and get a reality check. I have never in my life seen people in positions that have been so assumptive, so presumptive to read emails of your choosing and then not have the decency and respect to look me in my face when I'm addressing you. It is beyond anything that I have ever seen. Alderman Cooper, I've never said a negative word about you. We've had a meeting face to face. Same thing with you, Alderman Adler. Tommy, we've had many a conversation. Daryl, I've spoken with you briefly as well. I have always been respectful. You might not like what I have to say. You might not like the directness with I say it, but I have not been demeaning. I have not been belittling. Have I shined a light? You bet I have. And it just got a whole lot brighter for many of you. Thank you.